Hello, my name is AJ Brandt. I'm a chapter past president and member of EAA 1158. Today, we're going to review startup and shutdown procedures of our IFR certified flight simulator you see here. I will be describing the appropriate procedures to turn the CPU on, the IFR certified software, and any system settings we may need to accurately and enjoyably be able to fly and log the time. The first step in starting the system is to turn the CPU on. It is a Windows-based system, and it's very simple as just pushing the start button, which is located on the top front corner of the CPU. After pushing the CPU start button, the Windows system will load after approximately 90 seconds. The screens seem to take a little bit longer than you normally would imagine, so just be patient and wait for the Windows start screen. During this time would be a great time to grab the logbook and then fill out your name, the date, the hop start time, and whether you're using an instructor or not. The hop start time is just how we keep track of the simulator for billing and use purposes. And that number is right here next to the mixture control unit. On top of the flight simulator log, there is a flight simulator mini guide. There is only one of these, so please make sure it stays here. You are welcome to page through it. It has a lot of detailed instructions on how to specifically configure the simulator to best match your aircraft or the type of flying you'd want it to do. We also have a flight sim startup and shutdown checklist, much like we'd have on our own aircraft. And if at any time you are wondering if you're doing a procedure wrong or not in quite the correct order, just review to the checklist here. That's always sitting on top of the Pro panel, and we will get the simulator loaded in the appropriate order. Once the Windows system is on, the Elite hardware is all based off of a USB device. We have to turn that on. The master key is here, and it says Panel Master. All you have to do is turn the key on. The green power light goes on by the Hobbs meter, and the Hobbs meter starts turning. Do not turn the key on until you are actually ready to use the simulator, or the Hobbs meter will keep running. On the main screen here, we have the program, which is called Elite BATD Certified Sim. Using the mouse, double-click on it, and Elite begins to load. If you haven't used a multi-monitor system before, it's actually quite simple. The mouse rolls from monitor 1 to monitor 2 to monitor 3 just by scrolling. So if you can't find your mouse or your cursor, just wiggle it a little bit and find out where the cursor is. So after we click the Elite BATD Certified Sim, this Rearrange Panel screen comes up. We have this already default set, so all you have to do is click the button, Take It. The next panel we get is the different aircraft that Elite has built into the software. It ranges from Cessna 172s, 82s, Moonies, Arrows, and even a King Air and a Seneca. So if you would like to get your multi-engine IFR training with an instructor, that is actually loggable. You can actually shoot approaches, whether it's a single or a multi-engine aircraft, and that all counts as loggable FAA time. To select an aircraft, just select the specific aircraft you'd like. In this example, I'm picking the Bonanza A36 HSI GNS 430. There are a different amount of profiles created based on rough avionics from what we have here. You have the older King style radios, we have the Garmin 430 WAS, there's HSI and DGs. Unfortunately, in this rendition of the Elite software package, we do not have glass panel, so all of these aircraft are the 6-spec steam gauges. I pick the icon that I'd like, and then I click the Choose button. The next screen that comes up is the mapping screen. And you can see here, it's regions of the country. We're based here in Wisconsin, So I'm going to pick the area where Wisconsin is based and hit choose. The system now goes through a bunch of tests, doing all the calibrations of the buttons, the yoke, the pedals, and the throttles. At this time, please do not touch anything until the system is done calibrating it. And it will say, please do not move controls. The ATD requirement from the FAA shows on this second monitor here, and it says if this current session will be used for instrument experience currency requirements required by 14 CFR Part 61.57, the visual component during instrument approaches must be configured to instrument meteorological conditions until reaching the decision height, the decision altitude, or a minimum descent altitude as appropriate. What that means is we have to set the display like we're actually in IMC, so we don't see the runway environment until those appropriate altitudes, or the approach does not count as a loggable approach. All we do is click OK in this requirement box to confirm that we have read and understand that. The system then comes up in standby. And how we know it's on standby is there's this freeze right here in the top left-hand corner of the primary monitor above the control yoke. The freeze button is located right here. And if you click it, you can see the freeze now gets replaced with parking brake, showing that the parking brake is on. At this state, you are an aircraft located here at West Bend, Wisconsin, at the end of runway 31 that is completely turned off. So you're an aircraft with the engine and the avionics and everything off at the end of the runway with the parking brake on. If something like this, like a virus scan, comes up, just hit close. Those of us on staff keep the simulator up to date, and we don't have to worry about any of those. So if anything like that pops up, please just disregard it and close it. The different screens here are your primary screen, which is your 6-pack of instruments, your 430 display module. As you can see here, we just have the 430 buttons. In order for Elite to give a 430 module that's cost effective, they just built the display into the computer screen and not here like we would have in our aircraft. Also are the King radios, an ADF, your transponder, your autopilot, altitude control selectors, and also audio panel. On screen 2 is kind of your ATC map overview. In flight, I can show you how we can click and drag and reposition ourselves. And in monitor 3 here is the configuration settings where we can modify the weather and different settings with the simulator. And we will go through each monitor system as we go forward here. For those of you with an iPad, a docking mount for an iPad mini is supplied on the simulator. If you would like to use your mount, if you have a bigger version than a mini, feel free to just take it off and set it off to the side. There is a RAM ball mount located on the yoke. The next step will actually be starting the aircraft. Well, we don't have a specific checklist for this. You would start the aircraft just like you would do your normal aircraft. So the first thing we do is the battery master, the alternator, and then magnetos. Once you have that, you take your mixture control unit, a little bit of throttle, and hit the start switch. And hold the start switch until you see oil pressure and your manifold pressure come up. And once the AI has become erect, you can see that the aircraft is running. By turning the radio master on, you can see the radios load, and the Garmin 430W begins to do its self-test, much like in our own aircraft. And much like in our own aircraft, you have to hit the enter button to check the CDI just like you would on a real 430. So if we hit enter, we can see half left out of view, half up out of view. Hit enter again, and we're in the map page. And you can see we're on runway 31 here in West Bend. The knobs and everything on the 430 work just like a 430 or 530 you may have in your own aircraft. This is the main view of the simulator. And you can see there's not much visual representation here. Elite is for basically IFR training and currency. So we really don't need to look outside a whole lot. That being said, on approaches and landing and takeoff, it is nice to see a little bit more runway. What you can do is put your cursor up here on the top of the glare shield, click and drag until the screen goes down here, and it kind of removes some of your gauges, like your fuel gauges and things like that. Gauges in a real aircraft, that would be important, but with the simulator, it's kind of more fluff. That gives you just a little bit more visual representation, which makes landing after an approach a little bit easier. The next screen we're going to discuss is our third monitor here. Here is where most of the different configurations happen. By hitting the right click button on the mouse, different screens are available. They range from iPad configure, malfunctions, METAR, METEO, modification, and configuration. We'll go through them one at a time. The first one we're going to go through is iPad configure. The iPad configuration screen takes place of the second display then. As you can see, different software packages are shown here. The easiest way to get your iPad to talk to the Elite simulator is hit the send button on whichever software package you have. Most of us have ForeFlight or WingX, so you can hit the send on ForeFlight. In addition, your iPad needs to be configured to the EAA Wi-Fi that is free and open SSID here in the building, which is usually EAA 1158 meeting room or EAA 1158 hangar. After hitting send on the appropriate software dialog box, you can verify your iPad is indeed connected to the Elite Flight Simulator by going More, Devices, and then Check Devices. And as you can see on my iPad here, it says Elite. If I click on that, it says it's enabled. And then if I click on the maps, I can see that my dot shows me I'm here at the airport in West Bend. The next item on the configuration list is malfunctions. As you can see, we have various malfunctions that we can fail immediately or set a timer. They range from instrument and systems to system failures to instrument in-ops, receiver gear flaps, engines, and random failures. Each one of these items is like a roller. You have to take the mouse and kind of roll it one way or to another. I will display an engine failure. So what we want to do is we want a timed engine failure. And I'm going to hit the arm button, and I'm going to go between 0 and 10 minutes from now. So anytime between 0 and 10 minutes from now, we could have an engine failure. And you can do that for any one of these things. If you wanted immediate failure, like if you had another member or instructor working with you, they could fail something like your oil pressure, your oil temp. They could fail your nav1, your nav2, a GPS signal, or any of your pitot static systems like that, to give you a more realistic failure item like we would see in an aircraft if something like that would happen. The next screen we have here is called METEO, which stands for meteorological. It's basically changing the weather conditions that the simulator is displaying and for us to fly in. A really added value option is the ability to download the current METAR live wherever you're flying. How that's done is by METAR hitting the download button. It'll ask, do you want to download the data from the current time? You hit download, and it also asks import downloaded information into Elite and engage METAR. It's basically asking, do you want to download it and engage the current METAR? I'm going to hit the download button. On this screen, you can see it's downloading the file, loading the METAR data, and then it's cloudy over here and overcast here in West Bend today. So you can see that the current METAR data and the live weather is actually engaged, just as it is outside today. You can engage and disengage the current METAR just by selecting the engage and disengage button. Also, in the Meteo configuration page, you can toggle between wind and clouds. If I hit wind, all the wind sections come up. And just like the malfunction pages, you can change different wind settings to your liking. If I hit clouds, you can change different cloud layers. Most often, I just use the bottom cloud layer. So if we wanted to do an overcast layer, I would hit overcast, and my bases, I would take my bases and I would just hit the down arrow until the bases got to the altitude that I would want the bases at. I would also take the time and go from 0 to 999, so that's active. And you can bring these down to whatever altitude you would like. Per the FAA regulations, they have to be just a little bit higher than your MDA or your DA heights in order to be counted as a full approach. The next screen is the modification screen. Most of these settings are already preset based on the aircraft manufacturer data and should not be adjusted. But if you would like, you can modify things like the date, the time, the aircraft heading, the altitude, your fuel load, and various items like that. The configuration page is also a basic page from Elite that should not be modified. The control page, just like I stated before, has different various things like load, fuel, and your aircraft configurations. Once you're ready to fly, hit the freeze button, and you will hear an engine roar in the background. And now it's basically just take off and fly, which I will demonstrate a takeoff and a turn to the north. Airspeed is live. Engine instruments are in the green. "60 knots. "80, rotate. Positive rate, here comes the gear. And as you can see, we had an engine failure set within 10 minutes, and I immediately had an engine failure after takeoff. So it works. Airspeed is live. Engine instruments are in the green. "60 knots. "80, rotate. Positive rate, here comes the gear. If at any point you would like to reconfigure or reposition yourself You do this via the map screen. You simply click and drag your aircraft wherever you'd like, and also turn the sliders for your magnetic heading and your true altitude and your airspeed. By doing this, you can set yourself up on a final approach course, intercept a hold, or anything else you would like to do, and not spend time maybe just flying around unnecessarily. I will now display flying a RNAV GPS approach here into West Bend with the meteorological settings specified as required by the FAA. You will see that we will not see the runway environment to almost minimums. And I will do callouts at 1,000, 500, and 200 to minimums so you can see exactly what the display looks like. Thousand to minimums, no flags continuing. $500 to minimums, no flags continuing. You can see at this point we're starting to get some ground contact. $200 to minimums, no flags continuing. And there's our minimums, and here's our runway in sight. Runway in sight, landing. After we land and we're done with the simulator, the appropriate shutdown procedure is as easy as shutting on your own airplane. First thing is off is your radio master, then your engine, the mags, alternator, battery master, and finally the panel master key. At that point, right-click anywhere on the screen and hit quit. And then start, shut down, and the computer will shut off like your normal Windows-based CPU.